The timeline is the story, not the speeches, not the talking points, the timeline. Because when a US president says this will be a great and brilliant day, and then, hours later, Iran recloses the Strait of Hormuz, you're not watching two separate events. You're watching a single system snap from optimism into leverage. Here's what matters about Hormuz. It's not a normal waterway. It's a choke point, one of the most sensitive in the world, where a disruption doesn't need to be total to become global. A single credible threat can raise insurance premiums. A single warning can trigger reroutes. A single incident can force ships to pause outside the corridor and turn open on paper into closed in practice. That's why when reports say Iran reclosed Hormuz, the question isn't only, is it physically blocked? The real question is, has the risk environment changed enough that commercial shipping starts behaving as if it's blocked? Now layer in the politics. When Trump calls a day brilliant, he's projecting control. He's telling markets, allies, and voters, progress is happening, momentum is on our side, the worst is behind us. That kind of messaging isn't just emotional, it's strategic. It's meant to calm the system. But Iran's move, again, based on live reporting and claims that can evolve, does the opposite. It tells the system, calm is conditional, stability is temporary. And if you think that's only about the US, it isn't. It's about the entire network of countries and companies that depend on the strait staying predictable. So, what changed so fast? That's what we're going to unpack. Because in crises like this, sudden reversals typically happen for one of three reasons: a bargaining tactic, a retaliatory signal, or a breakdown in back-channel understandings. Sometimes it's all three. And when it happens this quickly, brilliant day to Hormuz reclosed within hours, it usually means someone is testing the other side's reaction time. This is the central point. Hormuz is not just geography. It's a switch. And if that switch is being flipped back and forth, you are watching leverage being applied in real time. Not for theater, for outcomes. To understand what reclosing Hormuz really means, you have to separate three types of closure. Because governments speak in absolutes, but shipping lives in probabilities. There's legal closure, official declarations, stated restrictions, formal exclusion zones. There's operational closure, an environment where transiting becomes dangerous because of credible threats, missiles, drones, mines, harassment, interdictions, or escalating rules of engagement. And there's commercial closure, the moment insurers either won't cover a voyage at a viable price, or ship owners decide the route isn't worth the risk. Commercial closure is the one that hits fastest because it doesn't wait for a press conference. When Iran recloses Hormuz, it may mean different things depending on the mechanism being used. It can be a direct attempt to stop traffic. It can be a threat designed to force ships to self-deter. Or it can be a warning that signals a higher probability of disruption, enough to change behavior even if the waterway remains physically passable. Now let's talk about the phrase, what changed so fast, because it implies something important, that there was a window, maybe brief, where de-escalation looked possible. That window could have been created by rhetoric, by back channels, or by market psychology. And Iran's decision to reclose suggests either that the window didn't include Iran's terms, or that Iran wanted to prove it could shut the optimism down on demand. In coercive diplomacy, timing is a weapon. If you can flip the environment from calm to panic quickly, you demonstrate control over escalation. You tell your opponent, your narratives don't stabilize this, our actions do. And you tell the rest of the world, pressure your opponent, because we can raise the cost at any moment. This is also where competing narratives matter. If Trump's brilliant day message was meant to project progress, whether on talks, ceasefire terms, or de-escalation, then Iran's reclosure signals one of two things. Either Iran believes the progress narrative is being used against it, meaning it's losing leverage, so it reasserts leverage immediately. Or Iran is signaling that any progress must be bought with tangible concessions, not optimistic language. And this is how modern crisis bargaining works. You don't just negotiate with demands, you negotiate with system pressure, shipping, energy, markets, coalition unity. Hormuz is the pressure multiplier. Because here's the reality. A straight closure threat can do what battlefield operations often can't. It can internationalize the conflict immediately. Countries that don't want to take sides still have to respond when their energy costs jump, or when their cargo routes get disrupted. That's why choke points are power. So the rapid shift in tone from brilliant day to reclosed is not a random mood swing. It's a signal that the real negotiation isn't happening at microphones. It's happening through the system, risk, cost, and control. Now let's lay out the three most likely explanations for what changed so fast. Not as rumors, as strategic logic. Because even when facts are incomplete, incentives are visible. Explanation 1. Iran is anchoring the deal with leverage. This is the simplest and most common. Iran hears optimistic messaging from Washington and decides to immediately demonstrate that optimism does not equal control. Reclosing Hormuz, whether literally or through risk signaling, forces the conversation back to pressure. It's a way of saying, if you want the strait open, you pay for it in concessions. And those concessions don't have to be announced as concessions. They can be structured as technical steps, humanitarian channels, phased relief, access to funds, or guarantees. But the logic is the same: no leverage, no deal. What this looks like in practice: shipping advisories tighten, insurers raise premiums, and even without dramatic incidents, shipping behavior becomes cautious. Daylight transits, delays, clustering, rerouting. The point is to create measurable economic pressure quickly. Explanation 2. There was a real incident, or a perceived one, that changed rules of engagement. In high-tempo conflicts, it doesn't take much. An interdiction attempt, a misinterpreted maneuver, a drone sighting, a radar track that looks like a threat. Even if no shots are fired, the mere perception that an incident occurred can harden postures. And once postures harden, the easiest place to demonstrate resolve is a choke point. What this looks like in practice: sudden shifts in official language, more unacceptable, more violations, more self-defense, less framework, less channels. You may also see visible posture signals: escort talk, expanded patrol announcements, warnings to commercial shipping. Explanation 3. Internal politics, hardliners enforcing a line. This is the quiet driver people underestimate. Sometimes the external story is negotiations, but the internal story is power. If factions inside Iran believe diplomacy is weakening their leverage, they may force a reclosure posture to prove that resistance still sets the agenda. Likewise, U.S. politics can push leaders toward optimistic statements that are not matched by operational realities. When those two domestic forces collide, the system whiplashes. What this looks like in practice: inconsistent messaging. Some officials sound open to talks, others sound absolutist. Repeated use of moral/legal accusations, strong emphasis on sovereignty and humiliation language, and very short cycles of escalation and calming statements. Now, here's the crucial point. Any one of these explanations can be true without excluding the others. In fact, the most dangerous crises are the ones where all three are operating simultaneously: leverage tactics, real incidents, and domestic political competition. That's when events accelerate, because everyone is responding to a different threat. One side is responding to markets. One side is responding to military risk. One side is responding to domestic narratives. And when you have three clocks running at once, a brilliant day can turn into reclosed in a single news cycle, because nobody is managing the same reality. So the question, what changed so fast, becomes a test. Are we watching controlled pressure to force talks, or are we watching a system slipping toward unmanaged escalation? Here's how you tell the difference, because the next 24 to 72 hours will reveal whether this is a bargaining spike or the start of a longer choke. First, watch shipping behavior, not statements. Are vessels actually transiting? Are they bunching outside the strait? Are there visible holding patterns? Are ship owners delaying departures? You don't need perfect data, you need pattern change. In chokepoint crises, commercial behavior is the earliest truth signal. Second, watch insurance and maritime advisories. This is where perception becomes policy. If premiums spike and stay elevated, the market is telling you it expects sustained risk. If advisories shift from caution to avoid transit, that's functional closure even if officials deny it. Third, watch naval posture language. Escort, security corridor, convoy, expanded patrols, rules of engagement. These phrases tell you whether militaries are preparing for contact. Stabilization posture is usually paired with deconfliction messaging. Escalation posture is paired with absolutist rhetoric. Fourth, watch intermediaries. When a deal is real, intermediaries start sounding procedural. Channels are open. Technical discussions, framework, avoid misunderstandings. When escalation is coming, they either go quiet or switch to warning language. Silence can be as meaningful as a statement. Fifth, watch how Washington responds to the whiplash. If the response is primarily rhetorical, it may indicate back channels are active and both sides are trying to avoid locking into public positions. If the response emphasizes legality, coalition unity, and visible deterrence, it may indicate the legitimacy contest is moving into the open, and that tends to harden positions. Now bring it back to the title. Trump called it brilliant. Then Hormuz reclosed hours later. That isn't just irony, it's a signal that narrative control is weaker than operational control. And in this conflict, operational control often lives at the choke points, where a threat doesn't have to succeed fully to reshape global behavior. If Hormuz stays functionally closed, meaning shipping continues to hesitate, insurers continue to price extreme risk, and navies continue to posture, then the story won't be who said what. The story will be that the world is now paying for instability every day. The strait remains uncertain. That's the pressure engine. And that pressure engine forces decisions. It forces emergency diplomacy. It forces countries that want to sit out the conflict to demand stabilization. It forces leaders to choose between concessions and escalation. And it forces a simple question to the top of every agenda. Who controls the switch, and what are they asking for to flip it back?